Thank you for joining us today on Earth File. Welcome to the program. I'm Ayola Kasim. Doubling the global share of renewables by 2030 would dramatically decrease emissions harmful to human health. This will save up to 4 million lives per year by 2030. And the good thing is, the renewable energy sector employed at least 8.1 million people directly or indirectly worldwide in 2015. Here in Africa, there is an increase with a conservative estimate of over 61,000 jobs in 2015 as new projects came online. On the last day of January, the federal government also flagged off a project that will power 20,000 homes in Nigeria. The move towards green economy is necessary, but how will this work? Our focus today on Netfile. To stay with us.
This is going to be the beginning of the deployment of solar home systems and solar power to very many villages all over Nigeria. And so I commissioned this solar home systems for the benefit of the people of Mona and for the benefit of the Nigerian people.
The flag off of the Pay-Go solar home systems, which took place at Wuna village of the Federal Capital Territory, as part of activities under the Presidential Initiative on Rural Solar Home Lighting Systems. It is projected to create 500 direct jobs, including solar installers and agents, as well as another 5,000 indirect jobs within a minimum period of 24 months.
In November of 2015, and I think the conversation actually started about September, the President Muhammadu Buhari, spoke to me about what we could do to very quickly accelerate electrification, especially in the rural areas. We had in mind all manner of different types of projects that we could do to bring electricity to many of our rural communities, to many of our villages. And he was particularly concerned that as we spoke about farming and also education in the rural areas, how would we be able to get maximum, irrigation facilities, maximum facilities for education, all of those kinds of things. How do we maximize these things if we can't get power to those places? Water pumps, irrigation equipment, just about anything requires power. So we came together and we began to look for ways of deploying solar systems in villages in Nigeria. And I think there must be something very special about Wuna village, that it became the very first to have that deployment done.
The Nigerian government's ambitious renewable energy policy aims to increase energy production from renewable sources from 13% of total electricity generation in 2015 to 23% in 2025, with a vision to ramping up the capacity to 36% in the year 2030.
We think that as solar power becomes cheaper, and it is becoming cheaper really practically day by day, we'll be able to afford to do even more, to deploy more across the country, especially to those places that are not at the moment served by our grid. The grid is just one, the grid is one, if you like, transmission center. But we cannot take all our power from the grid. And so in the next few years, it will not be absolutely important for you to be connected to the grid, because we will be deploying every type of off-grid solution that we can deploy.
Nigeria is projected to have a share of 2% of modern renewable energy use by 2030 if a doubling of renewable energy share is achieved. Nigeria currently needs a combination of on-grid and off-grid sources to meet its energy needs. At the moment, the country generates up to 80% of its electricity from gas-fired power plants situated in the south, while just about 14% is generated from hydropower stations in the north. The highest peak of power generation was reached in 2015 when 5,075 megawatts of electricity was supplied. However, the level has halved since the incessant destruction of gas pipelines by militants began in early 2016. Experts have predicted that energy demand in Nigeria will hit 250,000 megawatts by 2030. The crisis in the sector, therefore, need urgent attention.
Policy framework are already developed. We are overburdened by this, but we need action. Action by government creating this enabling environment, bringing partners together and bringing all the linkage that is needed to entrepreneurs like us and to enterprising organizations like us. Imagine if we have organizations like Carbon Credit Network that can scale to impacting over 3-4 million lives in Nigeria. We have 20 of that scale. Then we wouldn't be talking about job problem, or we wouldn't be talking about poverty anymore. So our banks also needs to begin to look at how they can work around the policy, the framework that government has to support more enterprises.
Recently, the federal government had a power purchase agreement with 12 firms for the construction of solar power plants in 8 states across the federation that will generate 975 megawatts of electricity. Up to 2.5 billion naira will be invested into the 12 solar plants that will be located in Enugu, Nasarawa, Kaduna, Katsina, Sokoto, Bauchi and Plateau states, as well as the Federal Capital Territory in Abuja. The federal government says the development is part of its larger plan to diversify electricity generation, which, if implemented well, could give the country some level of security in the nation's energy supplies. The growth in the renewable energy industry stands in contrast to trends across the broader energy sector, given that the total number of renewable energy jobs worldwide rose in 2015, while jobs in the broader energy sector fell. In 2012, the world relied on renewable sources for around 13.2% of its total primary energy supply. And in 2013, renewables accounted for almost 22% of global electricity generation. The combination of population growth in sub-Saharan Africa and progress in other parts of the world means that sub-Saharan Africa becomes the dominant region of those without electricity access in the world, representing 90% of all the people in the world that lack access to electricity, compared with around half today. This means that in 2040, some 500 million people in sub-Saharan Africa, mainly rural areas, remain without electricity and continue to rely on the use of kerosene lamps, despite the many contemporary programs for off-grid lightings which help to reduce their use. Although the picture in urban areas is different, the number of people reliant on firewood for cooking in rural areas where consumption is much larger due to lower clean cooking access hardly changes. Rising incomes produce only a gradual shift in cooking fuels and the technologies used.
Africa have